This is the story
of Leilani O'Malley,
of unearthing the truth about the Alberta Eugenics Board,
of a court case that changed the way Albertans look at themselves.
This is the story
of how our legal system was effective in reversing a decades-old wrong,
Of a classic David and Goliath fight, of one person against the
of
government.
an extraordinary woman who overcame tremendous hardships in order to finally settle into her own voice.
We talk about
Courage,
Conflict.
constitutional challenges as we
Piece together-
dissect the moments that lead up to one of the most important cases in Alberta's history.
In our
touching portrait,
Documentary.
gripping courtroom drama. Told in passionate documentary style. Welcome. This is my play.
my role.
My assignment. The Office of the Attorney General is pleased to sponsor this evening's presentations as part of a restorative justice pilot initiative.
We'll be getting
All of
started
you
with
should have
the...
received release forms. If you didn't, there's more at the back. We would very much appreciate you filling out these forms, which verify that information contained in tonight's performance will not be used to initiate any further
We're
legal
talking
action.
about this.
Such forms are purely voluntary and should not be construed as binding. Plus, there's a draw for prizes.
All right, can we hear about the act?
The Sexual Sterilization Act, 1928. When it is proposed to discharge any inmate of a mental hospital, the medical superintendent may cause the inmate to be examined by a board.
No board interview, no discharge.
If upon such examination, the board is unanimously of opinion that the patient might safely be discharged if the danger of procreation, with its attendant risk of multiplication of the evil by transmission of disability to progeny, were eliminated,
If you have a genetic disease which might get passed along,
the board may direct a surgical operation for sexual sterilization of the inmate.
you don't get out unless you get sterilized. In 1937, it was determined that the board was taking too long to make its decisions. After that, you could be sterilized even if your perceived defect wasn't genetic. Oh, and if you were a mental defective, they no longer had to get anyone's permission at all. In 1942, eugenics atrocities across Europe, atrocities inspired in part by our own laws, were a source of the Daily News, and the province further amended the bill to broaden the range of mental defects, which could be the excuse for, which could be the stated purpose of sterilization.
Most sterilizations occurred at either the Alberta Hospital in Ponoka or the Provincial Training School for Mental Defectives in Red Deer.
The government would like to remind all Albertans that it was the Progressive Conservatives who repealed the act in 1972.
After 2,800 people were sterilized.
But we're not here for 2,800 people, right? We're here for Leilani.
Admission record of Leilani Marietta Scora, Provincial Training School for Mental Defectives, July 12, 1955. Mental condition. Seems intelligent. Moron.
Moron was as good as it got, since it was the highest functioning of the mental intelligence deficiencies classifications at the time. Idiot was at the bottom, and imbecile was right in the middle.
Being at the Provincial Training School, or PTS, rescued Leilani from horrific abuse and neglect she suffered at home.
The first thing my mother had me do in the mornings was to clean the barn by washing all the stalls out with Lysol, then carry wood and bring it over to the house. After finishing the outside work, I worked in the house, making beds and washing dishes. By then, my mother had already put all the food away and rinsed the dishes before I washed them, so I wouldn't eat any food off of them. She knew I would be hungry. For most of my childhood, I slept on a porch, in sheds, or in granaries where there was no heat whatsoever. Because of the cold and fear, I would wet myself most nights. The urine would freeze to the only blanket, and I would sleep on that same wet blanket all night.
Nurse's Logbook, Provincial Training School, January 1963. Leilani has had good health during the past year and has no accidents, no illnesses. She went home on November 9th, 1962. On her return on January 2nd, she was found to be 14 pounds lighter. Leilani has frequent home visits during the past year, but there is some question as to whether that was beneficial.
Not a day went by that I wasn't beaten with a belt, a stick, a board, or even a hammer.
The atrocities and neglect that Leilani experienced read like descriptions of the Inquisition or the Khmer Rouge.
She would act like she had done nothing wrong.
I have a daughter, just turned 1. The idea that a child can be subjected to this is so appalling, my brain shuts down.
It was like she was programmed to be cruel to me. My mother is dead now, and it is for God to judge her. My parents brought me to the institution 3 days before my 11th birthday. They didn't tell me where we were going. During the drive, my parents hid me. I had to sit on the floor at the back of the car at my brother's feet, like always. They left me at the entrance of an imposing brick building. Drove away real quick. I still remember the smirk on my mother's face. And that's when I felt my guardian angels come and settle on my shoulders. And I felt like they'd always take care of me. A nurse came out of the building and met me at the bottom of the steps. A nurse came out of the building and met me at the bottom of the steps.
I thought you cut this.
It's important to the story. Doesn't work with me doing it.
Please.
I'm not wearing the hat.
I can live without the hat.
Come along, girl.
A nurse stripped Leilani down, gave her a thorough inspection, and shaved her head.
Third finger on both hands deformed, a number of small scars on entire body. 2 scars on right knee, 2 scars on left knee, 1 small scar under chin. Clothing, rather shabby. This is the main administration building.
Lunch here?
No, follow me. Over there is the school where you and the other girls will go during the day. There's the Ash Villa where you'll be sleeping. And over there is the playground where you can see some of the other girls playing. Not now.
After lunch?
Children who don't do what they're told go over there, to the Cherry Building.
The one with the teeny windows?
We don't want to send children to Cherry, but if you don't listen and you don't do your chores, in you go. Do you understand, Leilani?
Who's Leilani?
That's the name on your form.
Everybody calls me Tom.
Well,
Leilani.
that's right.
That's the prettiest name I've ever heard.
You'll have lots of time to try it out later.
Lunch?
Well, it's nearly supper time. Let's go see what we can do.
Thank you. Leilani spent 10 years at the PTS.
It was at the PTS that I first heard Elvis. I heard him on the Ed Sullivan Show, and I felt, well, I became a big fan. My roommate liked him too. She was so skinny she had to hold onto walls to walk. She had health problems, but we both loved Elvis. I still keep a picture of him over my desk.
According to his high school records, Elvis Presley's IQ was 70. The same score that Leilani received when she was tested at the school.
So, on to the eugenics board meeting?
No, it's too soon. We'll loop back to it later, I promise.
After 10 years at the school, Leilani's mother pulled her out on the pretense of taking her out for dinner, but instead made her come back to Edmonton where Leilani was forced to keep house and look after her little brother.
20 cents to ride, man.
Oh, sure. 5, 10, 11. What's 11 and 5?
Just get on, man.
I can pay.
Just get on.
Where does this go?
Go up 109.
Because I was thinking that where I'd really like to go is a Catholic church.
It's 10 p.m., mademoiselle.
Yes.
I don't
When we
think
lived in Black Diamond, I used to go to church every single morning, and I loved it. I loved every single thing about it. How nice the ladies looked, and how straight the men sat, and how sweet the music sounded, and how the priest's voice talking in Latin just kind of felt like a warm blanket. My mother, she never had any special clothes for me to wear to church, and one time, Father Malville, he took a bunch of Kleenex and zip, he made me a flower to wear in my hair instead of a bonnet. And the nuns, the grey nuns at the convent where I stayed once were so nice. They smelled like soap and roast beef. And Mom took me to Edmonton to help out for just a little while, but I've been in the apartment for 5 months now, and I miss the school and my friends there. I've been taking care of my little brother and sleeping on the floor, and Mom is so mad all the time.
Ay, ay.
It doesn't hurt anymore, so don't worry about it. Then Molly and Gladys came to the door tonight and said they could give me some money and help me go. And I thought about my brother. I was scared to leave him, but scared that if I didn't go, I'd be there, sleeping on Mom's floor forever. So, I walked and walked. Some of the lights up ahead turned out to be the bus depot. I took 2 quarters from the money that they gave me and I put it into the photo machine, and it gave me 4 pictures back.
You want to go to a Catholic church?
Have you seen The Bells of St. Mary's? It is the best movie ever. Bing Crosby is Father Chuck O'Malley, and Ingrid Bergman is Sister Mary Benedict. And they care so very much about all the children in the school. It's like the priest and the nuns back in Black Diamond. And I figured...
I've got one more loop to do and then I'll go back to the depot. I'll drop you off at the Sacred Heart Church on 96th. I think they have priests who live there.
God bless you.
I'd like to note that the driver was acting recklessly and assuming personal responsibility for transporting a passenger in contravention of Edmonton transit policy.
Right.
Got it.
The priests took Leilani to order of nuns. The nuns helped her get her on her feet.
She'd never taken care of herself before, and she had no one.
The nuns from the shelter got Leilani a job at the Edmonton General Hospital working in the children's ward.
I love taking care of the little ones, though it's hard to see them hurt and in pain all the time. I try to be strong and happy for all their sakes. Sally here has beautiful blue eyes. Her hair is so soft and shiny, yellow turning brown. Sally laughs when you bounce her just right, and she has the best smile ever. Sally is really sick. I hold her all night, and I hold her, and I hold her. And she stops smiling, and she...
When Leilani can't stop crying, she is asked to leave the hospital. She gets another job at a Greasy Spoon across the street from the McDonald Hotel. She's careful and good with the customers, and pretty soon everybody loves her.
1 coffee, 1 red rose tea, sugar's on the table there. You want cream with that? Right. You want water too? I'll go grab it. A special day is the shepherd's pie, glazed carrots and mashed potatoes on the side, $1.45. Soup is vegetable beef, and I know what you're thinking. We start with the Campbells. We always start with the Campbells, but Mike put bits of yesterday's roast in and some peas and some celery, and it is really good.
Leilani moves out of the shelter and into the larger world.
Excuse me, what's that big green thing?
The watermelon?
That's a watermelon?
Yeah, you want to try some?
You bet. Oh my goodness. Oh my. Wow. The feed, what do you do?
Spit them out. Here's a plate.
It's so sweet and fresh, and it's like sunshine before breakfast.
Well, I should cut you up some to take home.
I'll take one.
Oh, watermelon? Little bitty thing like you?
I'll take one.
Clothes from the shelter and a waitress uniform were all well and good, but Leilani also soon discovered retail. Can I help you?
Can you help me what?
Can I show you something in particular?
What do you want to show me?
Would you like to try on any of the clothing?
You mean I can have these?
Oh, we just got some of these new rayon skirts in. You've got a lovely figure.
These sweaters feel like petting a kitten.
Do you mind if I ask you how much you might be willing to spend?
After the watermelon, I got $13.
Let's see what we can do. Here. Try this.
Because I was so small back then, I didn't have any trouble fitting into any clothes. I fell in love with a pretty red pantsuit. It was the first time I bought something for me besides food.
I really like the fit with the watermelon.
She still has the pantsuit.
Get out.
So on to the sterilization boards.
No, still not quite there yet. Leilani goes on to marry the first man who asks her out.
A horrible, abusive nightmare of a man.
Needless to say, this does not end well. To add insult to injury, this is also the first time Leilani learns that she's been sterilized.
The operation had been performed under cover of another procedure, an appendectomy. And because Leilani had never been formally discharged, she was not informed of the sterilization.
35, Leilani marries again.
Dale and I were trying to adopt. He was real good with kids, and I could see that he'd be a good father. Well,
So?
it's good to see you again. You too?
Yeah, well, so our paperwork, our application's okay?
The application. All of the forms seem to be in order.
He said the process could take a long time, but when we got your call, we spent the weekend and got everything. We already had the crib and the change table and a bunch of toys for the kids.
No, there's no match. As I think I mentioned, it's standard for us to go through any background information for any flags. We're very clear about that.
Oh, was this about the time I got drunk in Kamloops? Because I swear that other guy was
No. But we have received a flag.
I don't get it.
Well, it would appear that, and of course I'm very eager to know if there's been a misunderstanding about this, but it would seem that Leilani spent some time in a provincial institution.
What? That's crazy. She never.
Is that incorrect then, Leilani? Has there been a mistake?
No.
What?
From 1955 to 1965.
What's that got to do with this?
There's a flag on Leilani's bio. I'm afraid that it wouldn't, well, that because of this, the adoption cannot proceed.
A flag. What's it say?
I'm afraid I'm not at liberty.
Says here you're mental defective.
No.
Says you're unfit for parenthood.
Dale, listen.
There is a divorce.
He had taken away all my hope of having children. My cat Taffy died. I was on social assistance, totally alone. But my doctors gave me some prescriptions, some Valium antibiotics, some other thing. One day I laid them all out on a table and decided to take a few.
Leilani has a vision which makes her stop taking the pills, and she writes her first poem.
Would you like to hear it?
We should probably move on to... Okay.
Who is my friend? Look up in the sky and what will you see? A million stars looking at me. So you say again, who is my friend? Well, all those stars are angels, and they are my friends. The Lord has got all his angels' hands in his, and looking down on me and saying, these are your friends. Look into the stars, and what will you see? All the stars in the galaxy. These are your friends and always will be. Thank you, Lord, for looking over me. Writing that poem saved my life. I never lost my faith again.
A public health psychologist encourages Leilani to seek out legal counsel to help gather information about the time she spent at the provincial training school. She has medical tests performed which show that, unlike most operations of this nature, so much of Leilani's fallopian tubes has been removed that the damage is irreparable.
The doctors told me that my insides look like a slaughterhouse.
Leilani begins to look into options for restitution. Several law firms decline to take on a case this old and against the provincial government. Eventually, she ends up at the offices of Field Periton in Edmonton, and the case is handed over to Sandra Anderson. Sandra is a former academic, come late to the practice of law, but she digs into Leilani's case with a passion.
Ms. Muir, it's important for you to know that there's a good chance that this case might never make it to trial. Because it's now been more than a decade since you first learned of the sterilization, the province may move to block based on the statute of limitations. It's also possible that they will offer you a settlement. There's a rumor that another civil action like yours was settled with a restriction that neither party discuss the case or the events surrounding it. All of which is to say that we will be doing everything we can to move your case forward, but it's also important that you prepare yourself for the worst. Trials are called trials because they are trying. This could take weeks in court, if we even get to court, and you'll have to be there every day. Months before that with pre-trial motions, counter motions, discovery sessions where the government's lawyers will be able to ask you just about whatever they want. Maybe in your mind, this will be all about them, about making them pay, about making them look bad. But really, it will become all about you. Your life will become the page this trial is written on. Your family life, your personal and professional life, from birth until today, all become fair game. And the press, they're going to be all over this. Well, it's important that we go over your expectations, what we should be working towards in terms of a settlement offer. Is there a number you had in mind?
A number?
A dollar amount that you're hoping to achieve out of this lawsuit?
I want them to say that they're sorry.
It takes a year just to get to the discovery process. First interview of Leilani by government lawyers, offices of Field Periton. I don't know why we're even interviewing a retarded person. None of this is going to end up admissible, but whatever.
Excuse me?
Being recording at 9:14 a.m.
This is wrong. I'm sorry. You didn't have access to the original discovery session transcripts, did you?
No, but we have Leilani's word.
Right, but this isn't some pretty story about watermelons. You're putting words into the mouth of somebody you don't even know. Someone who maybe still works for the government, maybe a decent guy, I don't know.
But the story is important to give the feeling of that time.
And how hard it was for Leilani to go through the lawsuit.
Yeah, the story is more important than the facts.
The story has to build on facts, otherwise it's just Republican. Like it or not, it's a fact that, well, parents with mental disabilities score high on some measures, they score low on others, and that's a valid concern.
Sure, and it's a fact that men with Down syndrome are born sterile, which is why removing their testicles at the PTS was horrifying and abusive. It's too complicated to take in with reason alone. With just the facts, you're never going to get to the heart of Leilani's story.
Heart. The heart believes what it wants to believe. You need the head to connect the story with the facts.
And yet a century of rule by the disciples of reason leads us regularly, rationally, carefully into absolute disasters. Oh, you want something more to the matter at hand? Here, this is Emily Murphy in the Vancouver Sun, 1932. 70% of Alberta's insane are not native to this province. They come from countries outside of Canada. The Sexual Sterilization Act is an attempt at salving the human wreckage which has been dumped from foreign lands. Stupid fathers with poor brain fiber produce stupid sons. While the child of a crippled father cannot inherit his wooden leg, it is almost certain to inherit his wooden head. The Bible says that the tree that brings not forth good fruit should be cut down and cast into the fire. It is true that in the sterilization of the unfit, we do not destroy the tree. We do not cast it into the fire. We only prevent it bearing fruit. It may possibly serve as a shade tree or as a windbreak.
Wait, was that Emily Murphy?
I'm sure she felt completely supported by the facts.
Like Famous Five, Emily Murphy?
A lot of well-meaning people believe that overpopulation by mental defectives spelled the end of civilization.
Eugenics was science when this law was passed. Mind you, scientists disputed plate tectonics till the 60s. Pluto was a planet 5 years
But
ago.
eugenics was bad science. Results rigged or ignored.
Yeah, but even when they get it right, they sometimes lead us wrong. I'd always trusted in science's objectivity, that we were all equal under its gaze, that if scientific methods were used, the results would be irrefutably true. But the scientific method doesn't tell you what questions to ask. It doesn't tell you what data to collect. Science told us 100 years ago that selective breeding would lead to happier, healthier generations. Science, religion, rhetoric all joined together and rode off into a eugenic sunset. What unsettles me about this is that faith, empiricism, art, no matter where you put your decision-making eggs, in this case, they all ended up in the same basket. A basket that turned out to be full of holes, which does not bode well for the ways we are still making decisions, still trying to avoid the next calamity.
The next calamity?
Testing for genetic defects in utero is leading to the selective abortion of Down syndrome babies. Withholding insulin from refugees because they're not Canadian enough yet. Parents euthanizing disabled children. The list goes on.
Maybe we should skip forward to the trial. Well, when you go to court, your life becomes an open book for everyone in the world to read. I wasn't a person anymore. I was a case number and a headline. I had 2 lawyers, Sandra Anderson and John Falls. They spent hours and hours on my case working night shifts. For 6 very long years, the government stalled and put off my trial. They must have known that my lawsuit was the tip of the iceberg.
But the thing about icebergs is that every so often, you hit one.
The first day of the trial, I almost called the whole thing off. There was a film crew following us around making a documentary. There felt like about 100 cameras and reporters outside the courthouse asking all sorts of questions. Sandra smiled at me, and we just sort of pushed through.
Justice Joanne White presiding.
The opening statement from the province.
My lady, the Crown would first like to make a statement with respect to an admission of liability. The Crown acknowledges that the plaintiff is entitled to damages with respect to the claim of sterilization. The Crown states that in the present case, adequate testing was not undertaken with respect to the decision as to whether the plaintiff should be sterilized.
Well, to stand up and acknowledge that right off the bat.
This admission is made with respect to this case and with respect to the sterilization alone. You understand these lawyers are just doing their job, right?
Oh, of course.
I was so nervous when I got on the stand. John helped me relax and just tell my story.
While you were at the school, did any of the staff there ever try to find out from you what the details were of your home life?
No, not whatsoever.
Did anyone ever provide you with any sort of counseling or therapy or treatment of any kind?
No, they had a clinic there that was for surgeries and stuff, or I guess if you broke your leg or something, but other than that, that was it. I think they had a dentist in there.
Do you have any particular memory of undergoing an intelligence test?
No, sir.
Did anyone on the eugenics board conduct any kind of physical examination of you?
No, I was only in there a few minutes and out.
Do you remember the amount of time that passed between the date of this examination and the time when your sterilization operation actually occurred?
No, days just went into days.
After the operation, did anyone tell you what it had been?
No, nobody did.
Who did you receive your first information from regarding what that operation was?
My mother, in so many words. When I was about 18, she said something. She didn't finish it, but she started to say that no man would ever marry you, so don't even think about it. She was going to say something else, and then she stopped herself.
The government's opening statement acknowledged that they had sterilized Leilani without adequate testing, but they also had to paint the school's practices as generally reasonable. And so,
When did you start to walk?
At any normal age that a child does, at about 1 or whatever.
How do you know you started to walk when you were 1 year old?
Because my older brothers told me so, and they should know.
All right, so you're relying on your older brothers then?
Yes?
You have no personal recollection of starting to walk?
No, but I was cooking and breakfast and everything at 6, so I had to be normal when I was 1, too.
I understand you also disagree with line 13 of the developmental history, which states that you had staring spells. Is that correct?
No, I did not have staring spells.
All right.
Staring in the corner, since I spent 98% of my time in the corner.
Do you also disagree with line 15, which indicates that you were 4 years old when you started to talk?
Yes, I disagree with that.
When did you start to talk?
Before I was 2.
And how do you know that?
My older brothers told me that.
Ms. Muir, at the top of page 2, there's a reference on line 16 that her speech is blurred at times. Was your speech blurred at times?
It is now to this day.
So you would agree with that then?
No.
All right.
I disagree with all of it. Anything that you're saying here, I disagree with. Like, how can you ask me about something when I was a small child? Nobody is going to remember this stuff. Come on. I don't care who you are, even a genius.
Ms. Muir, I'd like you to refer to document A335. Would you agree that document has at the top February 6th, 1965?
Yes.
Would you agree that would be after the incident in which you stole a girl's watch and lost privileges?
Possibly, could be.
And would you agree that the letter is addressed to dearest Mom, Dad, and Pat?
Yeah.
And if you go to the next page, it also says, would you agree, loads of love, your daughter Leilani.
Yes.
Did you write that letter?
I probably did. That's a lot of years back.
Go back to the first page, please. It says, Mom, I don't go out working anymore. So you would agree that would have occurred
About the time of the watch incident?
when you were suspended from outside work for stealing a woman's watch. Now, about halfway down page 2, it says, instead of them helping you, they make you worse than you are by punishing and taking your jobs away, and on top of that, not letting you go home even when your own parents want you home. Did you write that?
I probably did. I don't remember
Does
it.
that reflect your
Because-
opinion as to whether you wanted to go home in February of 1965?
I can't add to that one.
Mom, I wish you and Dad would sign the papers to take me out of here. Mom, I'm tired of being their slave and doing their dirty work all the time. Does that help you at all?
I was not a slave around there.
But do you have any reason to believe that wasn't your opinion at the time?
That's 30 years ago.
Would you agree that at that time you realized your parents could sign papers to take you out of there?
No,
You disagree with that?
I disagree.
Do you have any explanation then as to why we could have this entry?
I have no explanation for it, okay? Well, she was confused. She was just out of her teens. No one is ever completely consistent in everything they say and do.
What does it matter whether Leilani wanted to get pulled out of the school or enjoy being there?
It matters if they saw her behavior as indicative of retardation. Here, this is from later in the same transcripts. This is a clinical record that appears to run from July 12, 1955, and the final entry is January 1965.
Yeah.
Would you agree with under the January 1956 date where it says, Leilani associates well with other girls if she can be the leader, but is very loud and quarrelsome otherwise. She has little respect for furniture or other children's toys and belongings. She remains much the same, is very lazy, will do nothing without supervision, and a good deal of urging. Do you agree with that?
No,
So that's wrong.
100% wrong. Hey, I guess if they classify you as a moron and have your IQ at 64, they're gonna put things in there to make you look like that, aren't they?
January 1958. Leilani remains very badly behaved most of the time. Quarrelsome, insolent, refuses to do anything she doesn't want to. She plays well if she can be the leader, but will not play otherwise. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't.
Again, the document is wrong.
They're all wrong. When I first saw these documents, I wish I could have got a comedian to put it together.
Well, at least you can't say they weren't documenting anything.
Quarrelsome and insolent. I bet that the nurse was writing up the time that Leilani became a Cardinals fan. It was at the school, but there was a radio in the common room. Help me out, I need somebody to be your friend Glenda.
I don't do improv.
Oh, all right.
Glenda was a Yankees fan, and like Yankees fans everywhere, she could be a bit of a pain. She always hogged the radio on game days.
And last year they finished with 96 wins, and I listened to every single game in the World Series, and when they beat the Milwaukee Braves in Game 7 with 4 runs in the 8th inning, I got so excited I nearly wet myself, and plus I didn't want to go to the bathroom in case somebody came in and changed the station.
Come on, bud, I want to listen to Elvis.
Whitey Ford is pitching today, and the announcer said Mickey Mantle is playing, and he's already at 98 runs, and if he gets 2 more home runs, he'll already be at 100 for the season. The Yankees are up 3-2.
This is so dumb, you can't even see the game.
Sure you can, you just have to listen, you can make it all happen up there.
Boring.
Listen, it's the top of the 6th inning. St. Louis is at bat, the Cardinals.
Cardinals?
Devin Snyder's up right, one out, nobody on. Ford sizes him up. The crowd here at Yankee Stadium is chanting, they're out for blood. Snyder takes the pitch. It's a fastball inside and high. Strike one!
Haha, throwing smoke.
I'll show you smoke.
Hey.
No, don't!
You
Ow!
started it.
Snyder swings and holy cow, what a bullet. It's up, deep into left field and over the fence. Tie ball game!
Ha! Your Yankees are gonna lose!
Says you.
Losers!
Come on, Whitey, you can do it.
Come on, Cardinals, you can beat them! Ow! 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 Ow!
All right, you two, stop at this instant.
Leilani was making fun of the Yankees.
All I was doing was cheering for the Cardinals.
Well, you're finished with the radio for today.
Oh.
Go play outside.
Mm.
Should I have done that
I
angrier?
wasn't really watching it, but you're fine.
You see, Leilani might have been a little energetic with the PTS, but as Justice Veit noted in the trial,
I'm not certain that sassy is necessarily a bad thing.
After 2 days of Leilani's testimony and cross-examination, the focus shifted to a battery of experts. Experts on everything from intelligence testing to actuarial projections of lifetime income.
key to Leilani's case was Dr. Roy Brown, who established that the PTS's methods of admission evaluation were terribly inadequate.
Dr. Brown, what factors would have been taken into consideration in determining whether a child was a mental defective in the 1950s?
Well, I would expect an interview to take place, which would involve medical examination, as well as involving personal details about the individual. I would also expect a requirement of intellectual assessment, as that was seen, particularly in this province, as a critical part of an examination. Scholastic achievement is relevant to any type of diagnosis, tests of reading, spelling, mathematics. I would also expect a comprehensive social work report, including a home visit, to ascertain the living conditions of the child.
Now, in addition to that social investigation, you made some reference, I believe, to a medical examination. And what would that be aimed at?
Well, it would be aimed at, I suppose, basically two levels. One, the general health conditions of the child. Is this a healthy child? Was this a damaged child? They would also be interested in the emotional state of the child. Does this seem to be a child who lacks good attention? Is this a child who is emotionally stable or not emotionally stable?
I'd like you to take a look at Exhibit A003A, an intake form for Leilani Muir at the Provincial Training School.
Yes.
Now, does there appear to be indication of a physician's involvement in the preparation of this document?
Well, there's no signature in that space. I can only assume there was no such physician, or the physician didn't sign it.
And is the information there consistent with the diagnosis other than mental defect?
The information could be consistent with mental defect. It could also be consistent with emotional disturbance. Some of it could be explained by neglect or abuse, though that may have led in itself to the mental retardation.
Would you consider it proper professional practice at that time to admit a student to an institution as a mental defective on a form such as this with the physician certificate left blank?
No, I would not.
What was known by the 1950s about the anticipated change in intellectual functioning of children from adverse environments?
It was recognized by people who worked in hospitals that delayed intellectual change could take place toward the end of the late teens and 20s, going on to almost 30. And there was a growing idea in the mid-50s that intellectual assessment was a measure of functioning level and not of an inherited potential.
Document A039, record of the Provincial Training School.
Yes.
What does this document appear to contemplate to be filled in there?
Well, there would be a number of measures of intelligence over a period of time.
Is that consistent with the state of knowledge in the 1950s?
Yes. Presumably the form had been completed in this way because people realized it was relevant and important.
And now the form we have relating to Leilani Muir. Does that form indeed show multiple testings of her intelligence over the years?
It provides only one assessment in 1957.
Is that up to the standards of the day?
No, it is not.
This test was completed 3 days before her session with the Eugenics Board and after she had already been placed on their agenda. And now, cross-examination of Dr. Roy Brown by the province.
Dr. Brown, would you agree that the American Association of Mental Deficiency is a recognized authority in the area of mental retardation?
That is correct.
And would you agree with me that its 5th edition, published in 1959, was the first time it recognized that intelligence was not fixed, but in fact could be influenced by environment?
I think it was around that period. Yeah.
And would you agree with me that the manual also contained a category for what was then called borderline mental retardation?
That's correct.
And would you agree with me, sir, that that category was for IQs between 70 and 85?
I seem to recall that.
In fact, borderline mental retardation was not removed from the manual until 1973.
On the 11th day of the trial, the defense began to lay a foundation.
This was fun.
Fun?
Well, not fun, ha-ha, but fun! The trial transcripts. You can just see the clarity and drive in Sandra Anderson, but the ferocity, too. You're like a mother bear.
Sandra and John both say that this case was a highlight of their careers.
Anger can be pretty useful.
I speak of Leilani with such admiration.
I bet if Leilani hadn't found a way to take hold of her anger, she wouldn't have made it through 6 years of pulling together the lawsuit. Would you put yourself through all that without a little anger to push you on?
You mean the facts only carry you so far?
Something like that.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed be the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Ever since our first briefing, and every moment on the stand, Leilani had this rosary.
Leilani talks about guardian angels, but she doesn't talk about them in that comfortable, abstract way that I might. They're not a metaphor. They're not good luck or serendipity or a sense of joy.
Going to trial was so hard, nerve-wracking. When I was on the stand, I always held my rosary all the time. It was a light blue color.
This blue and glass brass rosary that she would handle and say her Hail Marys.
One day during my trial, I went back to the YWCA. I laid down because I wasn't feeling too good. I had my rosary in my hand when I went to sleep on account of I was praying. When I woke up, it wasn't blue, it was white.
Leilani's guardian angels are named Christian and Lilac, and they're completely real.
Well, I had
They
been
are hers in a way that nothing spiritual will ever be for me.
While I had been asleep, God had asked my guardian angels to send me a sign of hope. I believe in God very much. That day, I knew I was going to win my case. Miracles do happen.
And then she shows up at court on Thursday with a white rosary. And she tells a story about a miracle. A miracle! I don't know if this is a woman whom I need to protect or whether she's some kind of saint, someone who takes away sins. The sins of this system.
And I am glad that she has her faith and that it is a comfort to her. And at the same time, I am deathly afraid that her religious fervor is going to read in some way as slow And then I am appalled to have had that thought.
And she does. Leilani takes in sins, but she does not forgive.
The people who were on the eugenics board are the ones that gave permission to have me sterilized. My lawsuit did not name them individually because the Sterilization Act said that they were innocent. But in my mind, they were far from innocent and should be held accountable for their misdeeds. I know that God will deal with them. One witness for the government made me especially angry. Dr. Margaret Thompson.
Dr. Thompson, while you were a member of the board, what forms of mental deficiency did you observe?
Among the children who were seen, there were some who, well, all were, practically all had very low IQs, in the range of 70 or less. Some of the children were recognizable very quickly as being cases of Down syndrome or other known genetic syndromes. A great many were, at least at that time, not specifically diagnosed, but certainly were retarded in the sense of intellectual development.
While you were a member, what did you view as the purpose of the board?
Well, first we thought about the risk that the cause, that a person's defect or disability was a genetic cause that had a risk of appearing in the offspring of that person. And B, even if there were no such major risk, that the person's ability to function as a parent should be considered.
The majority of cases were those of poor intellectual ability.
We didn't see the ones at the very lowest edge of the scale. Some of the people are so hopelessly retarded that it becomes unreasonable to think of them in the sense of taking part in sexual relations. Most candidates were in the range of IQs of upper 40s to, say, 70, a bit higher. Those who were clearly above 70 were usually psychotic rather than retarded.
What steps did you take to assess a diagnosis?
We were presented with a certain amount of history, their birth date, a bit of family history information, where the child fitted into the family, a bit of developmental history in terms of walking, talking, schooling. We were also given the opportunity to interview each person individually, and that interview gave us a chance to determine whether we decided if we agreed with the, well, not the recommendation, but the diagnosis. In terms of the time it took to decide about the cases, in the case of the children, they weren't really children, they were teenagers, but in young people with mental retardation, sometimes it was obvious at a glance. We had a specific diagnosis that could assure us that the individual's condition was severe enough to warrant approval.
How did you perceive the impact of your decisions?
Of course, it's quite an awesome matter to recommend the sterilization, and we certainly didn't do it in any light-hearted sense. I would say, as a sad necessity.
While you were on the board, did you have an opinion as to whether or not the act was necessary?
Necessary is perhaps a strong word. Helpful.
Cross-examination of Dr. Thompson by Sandra Anderson.
This article is authored by you. Do you recognize it?
I haven't seen it in a long time.
You explain in it some of the things you did to provide service for people at genetic risk.
Yes, yes.
And you then go on to describe the act passed in 1928 during what you cite as the first flush of eugenic enthusiasm.
Yes.
Perhaps you could read the final sentence.
Well, this is what I've been saying all morning. The decisions of the eugenics board and eugenics committees seem to be determined more by sociological and medical than by genetical considerations. That is to say that the clinical status of the individuals and their sociological well-being were the factors that were considered.
This article was written in 1959,
Yes.
so that would have been your opinion before you embarked upon your term as a member of the eugenics board.
Yes, it's not a detailed opinion. What I had in mind was that it was well known at the time that it was not going to make a big difference to the genetics of the race as a whole.
Do you recognize this document?
Yes.
Can you explain its purpose?
This document is headed Eugenics Board and signed by Dr. Levan, the director of the school. It refers to the approval of the sterilization procedure on this individual.
Can you read what's written there at number 1?
This was the standard expression that was used, passed clear.
Standard expression that was used for what?
passed clear meant that it was all over as far as the eugenics board was concerned.
And it also referred to cases in which consent was not required, so you wouldn't have to worry about getting the parents' consent.
Yes, but it was our understanding that consent was obtained regularly.
And how did you obtain that understanding?
I'm not sure.
Come with me, Leilani.
I want to finish building my fort.
Come with me.
Lucy said her mom and dad are picking her up and they're going to go to the mountains. They're going to go to Pyramid Lake, which sounds like a beautiful name, only I don't get how a lake can be a pyramid because a lake is flat and a pyramid sticks up, right, nurse?
Do you want to send a letter to your own family, Leilani?
No, I was just telling you about pyramids.
All right.
And lakes.
Leilani, I want you to listen carefully.
We're going to the administration building.
That's right.
I've only ever had to go to the administration building 2 times.
There are some people who are going to ask you some questions.
Oh, I'm not very good at questions.
You'll be fine. Dr. Thompson is very nice.
Come in. Gentlemen, this is trainee 1325, Leilani Skora. Have a seat. Look at me, that's good, dear. Now focus. I'm going to ask you some questions and these men will listen and take notes. Don't worry about them. Focus on me. Are you focused?
Sure.
Good. It says here that you're a good girl at school, but sometimes you are troublesome when you're not given your own way.
I like school. Miss Rebecca gives us cookies on Mondays.
Good, but school, can you tell me the product of 6 and 8?
68.
Good. Can you tell me at what age a baby learns to talk?
At around 1, I guess.
Good. Now focus. I have a watermelon cut into 8 slices. I need to divide it as equally as possible among 4 adults and 4 children, with each of the children receiving half as much as an adult. What is the smallest number of additional cuts that I would need to make in order for everyone to get their fair share?
Their fair share?
That's right. Would you like a pencil?
What's a watermelon?
I think that we've seen enough. Trainee admitted by family, age 10, now age 13. Verbal IQ 70, overall IQ 64. Dr. Levan confirms diagnosis as mental defective moron and recommends pass clear for sterilization. Parental approval is in place. We're in agreement?
And how did you perceive the impact of your decisions?
Well, of course, it's quite an awesome matter to recommend the sterilization. And we certainly didn't do it in any light-hearted sense. I would say as a sad necessity.
The circumstances of Ms. Muir's sterilization were so high-handed and so contemptuous of the statutory authority to effect sterilization, and were undertaken in an atmosphere that so little respected Ms. Muir's human dignity that the community's and the court's sense of decency is offended. However, the province voluntarily gave up what would have been a complete defense to Ms. Muir's action. Ms. Muir did not start her action soon enough. Had the province used this defense, it would have put an end to Ms. Muir's claim. The effect of choosing not to use this defense is more than equivalent to an apology. It constitutes a real attempt to make things right. As a matter of policy, government apologies and initiatives of this sort to redress historical wrongs should be encouraged. The court awards Ms. Muir $740,000 plus legal costs.
It warms my heart to know that the government paid for the wrong that they had done. The money does not take the hurt away. Money will never take the hurt away because they took something very precious away from all of us, each and every one of us. I'm going to say this. I don't think they paid enough.
Leilani's case set off a wave of other survivors coming forward, mostly to Field Periton, the law firm that championed Leilani's cause. The provincial government tried to introduce legislation under the Constitution's Notwithstanding Act to limit reimbursements to the survivors. The public outcry was so intense that that bill was pulled within 24 hours of its introduction. Of the 2,800 Albertans sterilized between 1928 and 1972, 700 came forward to participate in the settlement.
I think Ralph Klein should have apologized himself, not first to second or third hand like it happened.
Leilani ran for the provincial NDP in 2000.
She traveled to a conference of geneticists in Versailles in 1997, where she had the opportunity to speak movingly about the harm that eugenics theories and practices have done to her and around the world.
She continues to be an outspoken advocate for neglected children and vulnerable individuals.
She's performed in a production of the Vagina Monologues.
In 2011, artist Kay Burns affixed a plaque to the footbridge in Louise McKinney Park, naming it the Leilani Muir Footbridge.
She's written a memoir.
I still carry the scars of my operation. I am reminded of this every time I take a shower and see the marks left by the doctors at the institution. The government tried to compensate for the harm done to me and the others, and I am thankful for this, but they could never pay us for what we lost. The damage just continues.
Is a pleasure. And when I finally went forward with my story, this is when I started to realize that after the trial and everything, I wanted to live, because before the trial I didn't. And now I just bless anything that I can. Here they come. Come on. Come on, here we are. Until I went public, nobody thought this happened in Canada. Nobody. And, oh, I know you need attention too. And they, you know, it's waking people up, opening their eyes, and to hear somebody that had lived through it. Shh. Don't bark at that baby. To, you know, like students, I'm just amazed at the students that every year we get in contact with from all over, like Lethbridge, Calgary, and Saskatchewan, when they're there and they're speaking, and how their brains are just like sponges taking everything in and learning from it, and they're going out, because they're the next generation. They have to keep this story alive and keep it going so that it never happens again. Here you go. Look. There. It's been a long day, so I'm going to say thank you to everybody for coming to the Fringe. And thank you to the cast. And I hope this story gave you a message to take with you and will help you go on in your life and
Yes. Yes.
treat people the way they should be treated.
There.
I'm going to keep on with my story and keep on talking about it and keep on reaching out to children and anybody that has been abused and try and help until the day God calls me to heaven.
Ladies and gentlemen, for coming out to our production of Invisible Child on behalf of Ma and Pa Theatre and of course Leilani herself. We really appreciate you coming out and being a part of this performance. The line about the release forms, those are actually forms in your programs that you can fill out, and you can win wonderful prizes from the Provincial Museum Archive, or the Provincial Archives of Alberta. Let's get that straight before I get in trouble. And if you don't have a form with you for whatever reason, there's more at the door. If you want to see a man flog a book, David Cheros will actually be flogging the book full of plays, the last 4 plays that Ma and Pa Theatre has done. It's for $20. He'll happily sell you one or multiple copies. I hear there's pictures of some quite striking actors and actresses in the book.
Hey, shut up, I'm in more pictures.
And yes, again, on behalf of all of us, thank you so much for coming out. If you enjoyed the play, please tell everyone you meet, strangers if you like. And if you didn't, keep it to yourself, because no one really likes a whiner. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and have a fantastic evening.
Another hand for this wonderful you, Dave.